ball.
Play ball. Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is an amazing event. Who knew there are this many Democrats in Johnson County? We did. Woo! And the other thing that a lot of folks didn't realize, there's about 100,000 of us in Johnson County. 100,000. And this is just the tip of the iceberg as far as I'm concerned about changing the dynamic that's at play in our state. You'll notice our, well, not that. You'll notice our Forever the Free State logo that's on your the various buildings and things. That's because we come from a people that came to the Kansas territory to do away with slavery.
You know what?
Abolitionists.
Yeah.
Abolitionists. And that, I like to think that we as Democrats, particularly here in the heartland, we are 21st century abolitionists.
Yeah.
Because we want to do things like we want to abolish the roadblocks that have been put in place for people who want to vote. We want to do things like abolishing how difficult it is for the poorest members of our society and our state to get health care. Just for political reasons being denied health care. We want to abolish a taxation system that denies a child in Norton, Kansas, the same education my children got in Shawnee Mission. We need to change that. But since there's so many of us here, let's have a show of hands. How many of are you from Johnson County? Let's see your hands go up. All right, I like that. How about any other county in our great state? All right. Good to see. Okay, now I'm really going to go out on a limb here. How many of our dear friends from Missouri decided to cross that line?
Hey!
Good for you.
Thank you so much for updating your passports and coming on over.
Yeah, that's all right.
The state line.
Yeah, because goodness knows we send a lot of money as Democrats that way. We'd like some of them coming back this way, so we appreciate your efforts this evening. This is fabulous.
I think that we've maybe missed out on maybe telling people who we are, Barry.
Oh, goodness.
I'm pretty sure that we missed that part. This is our first time working together, and, you know, Barry is an attorney. I mean, that's all. That's all I have to say about that. So, I don't know if you know anything about this guy, but he was unanimously voted in to be Renee's husband, and I've always known him as Renee's husband, and then I found out he was very fancy. That he was a well. You were a United States attorney for the District of Kansas.
I was.
Unanimously voted in through, yeah, let's give it to him. Give it to him. And he just stepped down in 2016 to, you know, be Renee's husband some more. So,
Well,
Barry Grissom, ladies and gentlemen, Barry Grissom, your co-MC for the evening.
And if you have ever been to a fundraiser like this that deals with children, domestic violence, issues that relate to the LGBT community, AIDS, this lady has probably been there, helping raise money for all those causes. Not only is she an amazing money raiser kind of person, she's an incredible talent, incredible actress, and she's married to Stacy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right.
Missy Koonce. And I'm really excited about tonight, but
What is it, Barry?
well,
I mean, just come out and tell me what's going on. You look a little blue.
well,
And not in the good way, like everybody out there.
I've kind of been in a funk and a little depressed. It started
When did it start?
Well, it started at noon on January 20th, and I just don't think I can survive.
I used to feel exactly the same way, Barry. At first I was afraid. I was petrified. Kept thinking I could never live with Trump And I spent so many nights thinking how he did me wrong. But I grew strong, and I learned how to get along. I've got your back in this safe space. I just walked in to find you here. It's time to find a brand new face. I could not change my stupid luck. I could not find the key that could have possibly kept Trump from being president of me. I wish he'd go, walk out the door, just turn around now. I miss the days of 44. I was heartbroken when Obama said goodbye, but I did not crumble. I did not lay down and die. Oh no, not I. I will survive. Oh, as long as I know how to love, I'll win against 45. I've got all my life to live. I've got all my votes to give, and I'll survive. 45. Hell yeah! So I've been there, Barry. I mean, I've been there. I know how it feels. I don't blame you, but listen to my story. It took all the strength I had not to fall apart. Kept trying hard to mend the pieces of my broken heart. I spent oh so many nights wondering why he did not lose, with his hatred and his bigotry and claims about fake news. Now you see me, tall, proud, and blue, gathered here with all of you to figure out just what to do. We are the ones who think all people should be free. So I'm saving all my voting for the ones who vote for me. Go on now, go. Get out the votes. We've got to shut down all the lies and insane quotes with all those crazy tweets. He'll try to break us one by one. We'll watch him crumble. We won't stop until we've won. We will survive. We will survive. Oh, as long as we know how to love, we'll beat 45. We have all our lives to live. We've got all our votes to give, and we'll survive. 45. We will survive. Anyway, Barry, that's how I worked through it.
Oh. Well, as you can tell, there's a lot of energy in the air. There's a lot of, what can I do? Since the election, I've bumped into more people who I thought were, you know, just kind of on the fence, who've come up to me and say, what can I do to move the ball, to change the agenda? You're doing it tonight. The crowd we have tonight, last year was the first year we did a gala like this, and it was very successful, great time, but we've doubled the number tonight.
Woo! And now we're going to let those people eat.
That's right. That's right. And that's only because we're building on this momentum that we all feel. We have, when the committee was putting this together, we decided we were going to focus and be very surgical, if you will, for the doctors in the audience. How can we make changes in Kansas? We decided that as Johnson County Democrats, we were going to raise money to go after and to support House seats in Topeka from Johnson County. As most of you probably know, there are 22 House seats out of our county. Right now, we hold 6 of those seats, and those seats are incredibly, incredibly special when it came time to override the veto. Were it not for those 6, we'd be stuck with a horrific budget. So, big shout out for our gallant folks who stood up. But we need to increase those numbers. We need to boost those numbers 9, 10, 11, 12. And if we do that with our moderate friends, and there are some moderate friends out there on the other side of the aisle, we can change the agenda. We can change the focus. We can make our government work for the people again. So we're thrilled that you're here this evening, and your contribution just can't be understated. This is just an amazing, amazing evening. We're so proud and so happy to have everybody here. One of the things that we would like to do, because we are all here, there are a couple of folks who are not with us this evening that we would like to acknowledge. One of them is the great Missy Taylor. If you had the great fortune of ever having an opportunity to sit down and spend time with Missy, you know that she was a dedicated activist. She loved the Democratic Party. She loved to talk about politics. You probably know that she got her bachelor's from Ohio State University and got her master's at the University of Wisconsin in Madison. And not only did she get her master's there, that's where she met her husband, Doug, a man that she was married to for almost 50 years. Her professional career, she was a special ed teacher. She taught and was a great teacher at doing this. She taught high school, middle school debate. She was a fierce force to be reckoned with, you might say, if you had an opportunity to debate her on any topic. She was, to paraphrase Shakespeare, quote, "Though she be little, she was fierce," end of quote. But Democratic politics was her passion. She ran as a candidate twice and unfortunately did not win, but it gave her an opportunity to get out into her neighborhood, to knock on doors, to talk to friends about issues that truly mattered to her. She was a convention delegate. She was a member of the Johnson County Democratic Party Executive Board, and she worked extensively with Kansas Families for Education, who supported pro-public education candidates. She was a deacon in her church. She was a mother to Darren, his wife, and a grandmother to their children. And this encapsulates what kind of dedication this lady had. When she passed away, in her memoriam, she explicitly requested donations to the following organizations: Planned Parenthood, her church, Planned Parenthood, her church, and the Johnson County Democratic Party, with this proviso: those funds had to be dedicated to specifically defeating Congressman Kevin Yoder. You gotta love it. You gotta love it. She also, because she had hay fever, she declined any flowers. And then she went on to say, just to be clear, no flowers, just beat Yoder. So Missy was an integral part of our community and our hearts, and we have received her instructions, our marching orders, if you will, concerning Congressman Yoder. And I think we are going to act upon her wish, and we're going to do exactly what she has asked us to do. And when he's defeated, I know that she will be there in spirit.
All right, we would also like to make a dedication to Mark Green this evening. Mark Green, I think his parents are here with us tonight, or parents, Mark Green's folks, here somewhere. Give it up for them. Mark Green was a remarkable advocate, knowledgeable, politico, and formidable spirit. He was a lifelong Kansan, born with spina bifida, which paralyzed him from the waist down. Former State Representative Gary Blumenthal remarked on Mark's passing that when he was out canvassing one day, he stopped by Mark's parents' home, and when Mark was only 10. Joan and Bob provided that if Gary was to earn their vote, he would need to pass inspection from Mark, who was only 10 at the time, by the way, a political prodigy. Now, Mark did press every question he could on Gary and went on to become Gary's high school American government student, which Gary was certain that Mark could have taught better than him. Mark was a lifelong parishioner of St. Joseph's Catholic Church, a Knight of Columbus, and a dyed-in-the-wool Democrat. He was also a member of the International Alliance of Theatrical Stage Employees, Local 31. He ran for office against miserable opponents when no one else would. He insisted on holding the line and upholding platforms that supported public education, investment in clean energy, affordable health care, and to defend the most vulnerable by funding the social services vital to our fellow Kansans with disabilities. Mark worked tirelessly to promote the Living Donor Protection Act so that the living donors could not face pre-existing condition discrimination when trying to obtain health care coverage, simply because they provided a life-saving gift. Now, while his body had to work extraordinarily hard, he was able to fulfill his own goal of being a donor. His corneas were acceptable for donation after his passing, as one of his friends noted. Thanks, Barry. The donor recipient would be so lucky if perhaps those corneas carried a hint of Mark's vision with them. In planning his own memorial service, Mark included the quote from Senator Ted Kennedy: "The work goes on, the cause endures, the hope still lives, and the dream shall never die." We pledge to continue his work and to hold the line for Mark Green.
Both of these folks are amazing examples for us. The challenges that we face, they faced harsh challenges themselves, but they always were what I will call, folks refer to Hubert Humphrey as the happy warrior. We don't have to be vile, mean-spirited, mud-slinging kind of politicians and folks who vote. Let's beat them with kindness. And both these folks exemplified that. The committee, when we were putting the presentation together, we wanted to recognize someone who we believed exemplified those qualities. We found, I think, the perfect person for that. Representative Ponka-We Victors represents the 103rd District out of Wichita. She's a member of the Ponca tribe of Oklahoma and is a direct descendant of two chiefs from the Great Ponca heritage, Chief Big Snake and Chief Standing Bear of that tribe. She is the first and perhaps the only Native American to have served in the Kansas legislature. She received her Master's of Public Administration from Wichita State University in 2008 and ran for election in 2010, serving her first term in 2011. That's getting on the horse and riding quick. I like it. When asked in a 2014 interview how her life experiences prepared her to lead her community, she spoke of how she was acutely aware of the conditions of her Native people and how they had to live while dealing with issues like health care, education, and land use issues. She questioned why her Native people had the worst health care available, recalling how she had to wait for hours to see a physician when she was a child and how that made a lasting impression upon her. And this led her to interning in Washington, D.C. through the Morris K. Udall Native American Congressional Internship Program, where she witnessed firsthand how budgets were made, issues were discussed, and how Native American funding often was cut, and how few representatives there were in our houses of government who were Native American. She decided to run for office because she wanted to help her people and she wanted to give her people a voice. She represents her district, and she also makes time for the 4 tribes that we have here in Kansas: the Prairie Band Potawatomi Nation, the Kickapoo Tribe of Kansas, Sac and Fox Nation of Missouri and in Kansas and Nebraska, and the Iowa Tribe of Kansas and Missouri, and Nebraska, excuse me, as well as others. Their concerns are taken into consideration and included when she is helping to mold key issues, and those issues are voted on. My favorite inspiration from the representative was back in 2013 during a hearing that concerned a bill requiring undocumented students to pay out-of-state tuition. The Secretary of State, Chris Kobach, as is his nature, spoke against the students. The representative responded, quote, "I think it's funny, Mr. Kobach, because when you mention illegal immigrant, I think of you," end of quote. Her plain-spoken truth was a rallying cry for those of us who support our diversity, value our friends from tribal communities and Native people, and who know those who try to divide us with hate must not be allowed to do that. That is more true today than any other time that I can recall. So for that reason, the Johnson County Democratic Party is thrilled to have the representative here with us tonight, and also her mother, Sandra, right down here, down front, is with us, to receive this award. I would ask her to come forward if she would, please, so we can give her award, and if she would like to say a few words, we'd love to hear from her.
Good evening, everyone. I am thankful and so humble to the Johnson County Democrats for selecting me as this year's award recipient. In 2011, the U.S. Associate Attorney presented a horrible statistic while addressing the Committee on Indian Affairs on Violence Against Women. Native American women are killed at a rate 10 times higher than the national average. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, homicide was the third leading cause of death among American Indian and Alaska Native women between the ages of 10 to 24 years of age. The U.S. has done little to address the issue of confirming the numbers of missing and murdered Native American women. There is no data collection system or adequate information on the numbers of missing Native American women. One Native American woman had said, "When Native women go missing, they are likely to be found dead." Nearly half of all Native American women will experience rape, physical violence, and stalking in their lifetime. Therefore, I dedicate my award to the missing and murdered Native American women and girls, and may they be returned to their loved ones. Also, to the leaders here, let's not lose our focus and continue to give a voice for the voiceless. Thank you again. We blaha.
All right, so before we let you complete digging into your dinner and before we have the big speakers of the evening, we want to recognize some people. Yes. Do we not, Barry?
We do.
I think we do.
Yes.
So we're going to read some names, and you can stand if you want to stand, but if you're eating some...
What is it they're eating?
Whatever that is.
Okay.
You don't have to, but we'd like for you to. It'd be nice if you would, because we want to know who we're voting for. So first, Barry, who do you want to talk about?
Well, he's not running for office, but I believe he is here. Is John Gibson in the house? There he is. I would like for everybody this evening, if you haven't had a chance, to introduce yourself to John. He is our new state party chair, and he is doing amazing work already. And one of the many things that I love about what John is doing, if you can get 3 people on a street corner, he'll come and talk to you. So when some, and I can't remember the county, it may be Norton, it may be out in northwest Kansas, the Democratic club of that county called him and said, "Well, I hear that you will come and talk to any group." He said, "Yes, I will." So he showed up and he spoke to all 4 of them. Oh, I'm sorry, 8. He's already doubled the number of Democrats in that county. But the importance of that is that he recognized those folks out there. They have value to our party. They are now totally committed because their chairman, their state rep, came out and talked to them and said, you mean something to the party. We need you. So if you haven't had an opportunity to introduce yourself to John, please do so. Okay.
All right, John. Hey, remember when we met in Lawrence? Good times. All right, so I want to talk about some Kansas state representatives right now. If you're here, stand on up. Nancy Lusk and Jared Ousley, Jerry Stogstill, Cindy Holscher, Brett Parker, and Valdinia Wynn.
We also want to have and recognize this evening House Minority Leader Jim Ward. Jim, you stand up. Kansas State Senator Pat Petty. And now we've got some folks. We're in uncharted territory, Democrats. We've got people in primaries. Yeah. We got great candidates. Mr. Yoder holds Congressman Moore's seat. We need to get Congressman Moore's seat back for the 3rd district.
That's right. That's right.
And one of these folks is going to do it. Reggie Marcellus. Stand up, Reggie. Tom Neerman. Andrea Ramsey, Jay Seide, Brent Wilder. Now, we don't have a primary in the 2nd district, but that's because we have the cream of the crop. Paul Davis. Stand up, Paul. I mean, can you just imagine the political talking heads when half the members in the Congressional House in D.C. are represented by Democrats in Kansas? It's good stuff. We also have wonderful people who are vying to unseat that guy who is off doing something with the administration, with whatever he's doing, and has left Cedar Crest in tatters. We want to put someone in the governor's mansion who is a chief executive who represents everyone. Those individuals, Arden Anderson, Carl Brewer, Mayor Brewer, Josh Foddy, Jim Ward.
It's a good group. We win no matter what.
Fabulous group.
We win no matter what. Now, I'm sure that there are a lot of Johnson County candidates running for office and some current office holders and other office holders and just plain old Kansans. Did we forget anybody? We forget anybody? Stand up if you're somebody that you think was forgotten.
There you go. Yeah.
If you think you were a forgotten somebody, just stand on up and say, "What about me?"
That's it. I like it.
There's a somebody right there. We
Yeah.
missed that somebody. There was a somebody over there. We've got somebody. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to take a little break. We're going to let you eat that. And then we're going to come back. We're going to see Kathleen Sebelius, and we're going to sing our keynote speaker, Senator Tim Kaine. So don't go anywhere, right? Stick around.
We are going to interrupt you for one more introduction, and I am embarrassed that I didn't recognize him because he is a champion. He is somebody who represents everybody in his city and in his county. And I'm talking about Mayor Mark Holland. Mark, where are you, sir? There he is. I had the good fortune of, when I was U.S. Attorney, on working with a couple projects with him. There is no finer person. Kansas City, Kansas, and Wyandotte County is lucky to have him at the helm. And we are honored that he's here this evening with us. Thank you, sir. In the way of health care.
It was a hard job, Barry.
Very hard. And what she did when she sat there in front of these group, and I'm supposed to be politically correct, so I'll just call them angry old white men, who would browbeat her, and she always maintained a sense of dignity. She was the smartest one in the room. She made her point, and she moved on, and she, along with President Obama and the rest of the administration, gave millions upon millions of our fellow citizens health care.
I have a tiny addendum to that one.
One
So
addendum.
You said she was the smartest woman in the room. I'd just like to say she was the
Smartest person in the room.
That's
Yes, yes. Yes, indeed. Indeed, indeed. I stand.
I don't want to interrupt you.
I stand
didn't want to interrupt
corrected.
anymore.
I
Just
stand
go ahead
corrected. I
with
stand
the official
corrected.
introduction-y
All right,
introduction
that's
thing.
right. All right.
Go ahead.
But with that, we can introduce her simply as our friend and our champion, Kathleen Sebelius.
And my girlfriend! I mean, not officially, but just sort of.
Hi, everybody. Thank you. Thank you, thank you. Thank you so much. I want to start by recognizing, and I'm going to make you stand up again, Barry and Renee Grissom have done a fabulous job holding this party, so please give them a huge, warm round of applause. There are spectacular people in this room, but I have to say I am so sorry that I didn't get to serve with Representative Ponka-We Victors. She is spectacular. Congratulations. It's wonderful to see you. And what about Missy Koonce? You know, she did play pool in the basement at Cedar Crest. She did wear wigs. I don't want to tell you what else she did, but she is spectacular, and you know you're at a good party if Missy is with you. I am delighted tonight to be able to welcome back to Kansas one of our great heroes in the United States. And I want to tell him a little bit about this state that he grew up in and just remind all of us of what our heritage really is. Because we're the abolitionist state, came into the Union side by side with the slave state, and those vestiges are here. We're the state that actually women have, unlike Virginia, where the Commonwealth of Virginia, where our native son is now located, where women in Kansas have always had a very significant role. Women could vote here well before they voted in the nation. But more importantly, men were smart enough to elect all women governments before women could even vote. So Kansas has been, women could own property here. It's the home of Brown versus Board of Education, which led the desegregation of our country. We are not the state of the Koch brothers and Chris Kobach. We are Kansas. We are a free state forever. And part of why I'm thrilled to see this group here tonight is the only way we reclaim and rebuild Kansas is right through Johnson County. You cannot win statewide office without winning Johnson County. You cannot be an effective policyholder without being in Johnson County. So having you here tonight is the beginning of the remake. I'm thrilled about the legislative victories in 2016, And that's a huge step, and thank you for everybody who stood up and stood out and walked and precinct. But it's the beginning. And what we have to do is, in 2018, continue that journey and come take the State House and the courthouse and the state representatives. We need to reclaim this state for Kansas. So get ready to go. It starts here in Johnson County. Now, tonight you're going to hear from an exceptional person who I've had the privilege of calling a friend for a long time. Tim Kaine and I were governors together, and we served in that capacity together, but I knew he would be very good because my friend Mark Warner, who preceded him as governor, when we were worried about Mark leaving office, he said, no, there's this terrific guy, my lieutenant governor, you're going to love him. It's Tim Kaine. And I began to work for him. I was involved with the Democratic Governors Association at the time. We wanted Tim to win. We were involved in his race. He has a pretty spectacular biography. His parents are here, and you'll get a chance, I'm sure, to meet them tonight, Kathy and Al Kaine, but they had the good sense to raise him here in the Kansas City area, so he got those Midwestern roots. And by the way, he shares those with Barack Obama, who I like to remind people were raised by Kansas women. His mother and his grandmother are Kansas. You know, just saying, it's not a bad pedigree. Tim started service early in life as a missionary in Honduras before he ran for political office. And then he had the good sense, and we share this in common, we both married children of popular Republicans, moved to their state and ran for office. So Tim is married to the wonderful Ann Holton, whose father was governor of Virginia and who actually served with my father as governors. When my dad was governor of Ohio, Linwood Holton was governor of Virginia, and they knew each other. And he was a remarkably interesting and courageous man who helped to desegregate Virginia. Ann comes out of that background, and Tim was wise enough to marry her and move to Virginia and say, okay, this is where I can be successful. He ran for city council successfully. He was mayor of Richmond. He was lieutenant governor. He was governor. He then served as chairman of the Democratic National Committee, went on to be a United States senator. But here's a part of his bio that I think gets overlooked by a lot of people. You know, he was an incredibly talented and forceful and effective choice for Vice President of the United States by Hillary Clinton. And we were proud every day that he was out on the trail and representing us. He was also on a very, 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 very short list in 2008 with Barack Obama. That was 8 years apart, when Barack Obama was choosing a vice president and when Hillary Clinton then chose a vice presidential nominee. There aren't many people on the face of this earth, and Tim may be the only one who actually was in that kind of position with two individuals looking at the role of presidency saying, who do I want at my side? And it was Tim Kaine in both occasions. And that wasn't a mistake. It is because Tim Kaine is not only a smart man, not only a man steeped in the history of this country and the love for this country and dedicated his life to service, but he is a very good man. And each and every day gets up with a mission in mind to make this country and this world a better place. So I don't know about the rest of you, but I don't have a United States Senator right now who speaks for me. Nobody from Kansas. I listen to their voices every day, and I don't hear anybody. I have told Tim this, but I want you all to join me in an official adoption ceremony where Tim Kaine from Kansas City becomes our United States Senator, at least until 2020, when we have the chance for our own election. Because God knows we need somebody. So I want to bring him up with just a quote from one of my great political heroes. Bobby Kennedy, who unfortunately was murdered in 1968, gave an incredibly important speech to young South African students in 1966. And it was in the midst of apartheid challenges in South Africa, and he went there to talk about leadership and effectiveness and why this younger generation should be involved. And what he said at the time, which is true in 1966, and it's even, I think, more poignant today. Bobby Kennedy said, "Moral courage is a rarer commodity than bravery in battle or great intelligence. It is the one essential vital quality of those who seek change in a world which yields most painfully to change." Tim Kaine is a man of extraordinary moral courage. I am proud to call him a friend, and I'm very proud he's my U.S. Senator and now yours. Senator Tim Kaine.
Good evening, Johnson County Dems and Free Staters all. Hello, Kansas. What a treat. What a treat. What a treat to be back home and be with all of you. These are hard events when you're with the people you love, when you're back in your hometown. It could easily be the 3-hour speech. Don't worry, it's just going to be 2 hours. But my heart is really full because of the people in this room. So let me just do some thank yous. First, to all the electeds and all the candidates. It's hard to run for office these days. Wow, it is a tough, tough line of work. I think the difference between somebody who's never run for office and somebody who's run for town council is bigger than the difference between somebody who's run for town council and somebody who's run for president. Crossing that Rubicon to put your name out there and court rejection in 50% of the cases, and know that you're going to be with a lot of the public that thinks badly about people in politics, and you will make a mistake because you're human. It is a hard thing to do. So to everybody here who has run or is running, just give them a big round of applause and some encouragement. It's so important. To my friend Kathleen and I joke about this. I'm going to talk about my folks in a minute. My folks are, when I grew up, just kind of the traditional Kansas moderate Republican, a very disappearing breed. And they had a son who got into politics in Virginia. I'm in Virginia because my wife's a better negotiator than I am. 33 years ago, we were each trying to convince each other, and I lost and have continued to lose. But my wife, Ann, of 33 years. I was running for office. I ran for city council and mayor, nonpartisan offices in Richmond, and was elected. And I ran for lieutenant governor as a Democrat and won. Then I ran for governor as a Democrat and won. And when I was inaugurated as governor, they took the inauguration from Richmond, the state capital, and they took it back to Williamsburg. I was the first Virginia governor inaugurated in Williamsburg since Thomas Jefferson. And I said to my parents, "So what do you think? You like me now?" And my folks said, you know what? We're thinking about switching from Republican to independent. I got him halfway to Democrat. It was Kathleen Sebelius who got them 100% over to Democrat. And if anybody wants to really know the reason I got to be governor of Virginia, it was because I was smart enough to realize if I stayed in Kansas, I wouldn't lose a race to Kathleen Sebelius. So that's why I moved to Virginia. Kathleen, you are a great friend. And, you know, let's be honest, millions of Americans have health insurance because of Kathleen Sebelius, and tens of millions of Americans have better health insurance because of Kathleen Sebelius. That's a keeper, folks. That's a keeper. To Nancy Leiker, the head of the Johnson County Dems, and to all chairs, if you are a party chair, you get to just bypass purgatory, go right to heaven. It's such a Purple Heart job. Thank you. And to all our chairs. To Barry and Missy, what a duo. I have not seen a pair of MCs. This is like Bing and Bob, or Thelma and Louise, or Tsar Nicholas and Rasputin. I mean, this is a dynamic duo here. You guys are awesome. Let's give them a round of applause. And then to my mom and dad, my parents, Al and Kathy, they live 2 miles from here, and they're sitting right here at the table with me. My brother, one of my 2 brothers, Pat, and his wife Joanna, are right here. My best friend from boyhood, Mark O'Connell, and his wife Lynn are right here. And I've got a lot of friends in the room. It's wonderful. And I'll just begin with, there's no place like home. There's no place like home. This is where I grew up. My parents are from Wamego and El Dorado. They moved to the big city after graduating from Kansas State, St. Paul, Minnesota, and got homesick. And shortly after I was born there, moved back to KC. And my brothers and I all grew up at 99th and Cedar, just a couple miles from here. And I mentioned, my parents were, growing up, we weren't a political family. Politics was like pro sports or Hollywood. It was something that other people did. We read newspapers and read the names of people in newspapers. My folks were the kind of moderate Republicans that liked a Bob Dole or a Nancy Kassebaum or a John Danforth. That part of the Republican Party that sadly is just dwindling to the point of disappearance. I was, like most teenagers, I was going to rebel. Some get arrested. Some experiment with activities that are now legal in many states. I decided my youthful rebellion was I was going to be a Democrat. And now it's a middle-aged rebellion, and I'm sticking with it, folks. You know, actually, if I think about what made me a Democrat, and you kind of go back into these experiences, when you grow up, the popular culture and the big experiences when you're growing up make such an impression on you. Your mind is forming. Your views are forming. I walked home from Trailwood Elementary School in November 1963. I was in the morning class. And I walked home, and I walked in, and my mom was in front of the TV crying. I'd never seen my mother cry before. John F. Kennedy had been assassinated. That's this Irish Catholic, which to an Irish Catholic family meant something. When you see your parent cry for the first time, it makes a huge difference. We were not into politics, but we got the Kansas City Times in the morning and the Kansas City Star in the afternoon, and we would get the Times, and it would hit the driveway, and Martin Luther King had been assassinated, and then Bobby Kennedy had been assassinated, and then the Vietnam War, and then a little bit later, Watergate. I'm probably with a lot of you in this room growing up where those things were the confusing to a child and to an adult, things that shaped your identity. I remember going to the Metcalf South Shopping Center. I just drove by it today. I see it's knocked down. I was 14 years old. It was 1972. This is my story about Johnson County Dems. We walked in the back door over near where the Metcalf Theater was. It was my mom and me and my grandmother, Pauline Burns from El Dorado, Kansas. We walked in, and there was a canvasser from the Johnson County Dems handing out McGovern buttons. And I just said, yeah, give me one of those. I'm putting that on right now before we walk into this shopping mall. I put it on. My mom looked at me. She rolled her eyes. And then my grandmother, Pauline, said, give me one of those. I'm putting that button on. While my parents sort of fit at that time within the Kansas norm, my Irish Catholic grandmother, Pauline Burns, she had a line, I'm a Democrat, and I don't mean maybe. That was her line. I then went to high school at Rockhurst. I don't know if we got any Rockhurst grads here, right? Rockhurst High School. If you go to a Jesuit high school or college anywhere in the country, whether it's single sex or co-ed, it's men for others or people for others. That's the motto. Focus on others. And I just will tell you, my whole political career has been trying to live up to the values that my parents and the Jesuits and my friends and my Kansas City upbringing inculcated in me. It's all been striving to live up to what these people taught me was the right thing to do when I was a teenager. Now, look, we know this. No party has or ever will have a monopoly on vice or virtue. My political hero is my wife's dad, who integrated the public schools of Virginia as a Republican when Democrats had maintained as Dixiecrats segregation. But while no party's got a monopoly on vice or virtue during my life, I think that Democrats are men and women for others. And I have never felt that in my life so strongly as the 7 months between January 3rd and early August, when together with all of you, we fought a pitched battle to keep Republicans from taking health insurance away from 20 million people. And every Democrat in the Congress and in the Senate stood together to make sure they would fail. Every last Democrat stood together. Because we're people for others. Because we're people for others. There's so much I could talk about tonight. I mean, how long do I have? I thought 2016 was going to be the most surreal year of my life, and it turns out 2017 is actually now passing it. I figured what I'd try to do tonight is just talk about three things. I want to talk about Democrats and the economy and jobs, the big issue that everybody's worried about around their table. I want to talk about Democrats and voting. And then I want to talk about what a horrible week I had last week and the meaning of what happened in Charlottesville. Not to Virginia, but the meaning in our moment in this country. Democrats and the economy, Democrats and voting. And what was the meaning of what happened in Charlottesville? Democrats and the economy. There are some who claim, if you look at polls, you see this, that the Republicans are the party for a better economy, and that that's the explanation for what happened in 2016. Well, there's a lot of explanations for what happened in 2016, but let me tell you one thing. The Democrats, over a very long period of time, are the best party to grow the economy of this country. Modern history since about 1900, most of you have seen this, shows that job growth and GDP growth are much stronger under Democratic administrations than they are under Republican administrations. And why is that? And I think it's because we've got a better philosophy than Republicans do about how to grow the economy. What's the Republican philosophy? Cut taxes and regulation. But we know that's not enough to grow a 21st century economy. And if anything proves it, it's the Brownback years when he has been the governor in Kansas, and his unswerving dedication to tax cuts has not led Kansas to thrive. It's led to very anemic job growth numbers. That's not the way Kathleen Sebelius ran this state when she was the governor of Kansas. Democrats have got a better way to grow the economy. Of course, we believed in balanced taxes and regulation, but we know the key to growth is investing in people, investing in better skills for workers, and that means education and apprenticeships and innovation and, yes, immigration. Investing in better jobs through investments in infrastructure, but also making sure that people have good jobs where there's health care and child care and the kinds of things that enable people to go to work and be productive. And finally, promoting strong wages, whether it's a minimum wage that gets you above the poverty level or pay equity for women. Democrats believe in growing the economy, better skills, better jobs, better wages. And I'll tell you, that beats less taxes and less regulation every time. And we shouldn't be bashful about bragging that Democrats know more than the R's do. This has been the Democratic plan in Virginia. We're pro-growth progressives, and it works. I was born in 1958. I turned 60 in February. Since 1958, no state, not one, has improved their economic hand more than Virginia. It was 36th in per capita income when I was born, and it's 12th today. Not one state has improved as significantly as Virginia has under a smart strategy, a Democratic strategy. 3 of the last 4 governors have been Democrats, and we're going to win the governorship this November, too, so it'll be 4 out of 5. We know how to grow the economy. So, oh, and guess what? A good track record for the economy also has helped Democrats politically. When I ran for lieutenant governor in 2001, we were in the wilderness. We had been red in every presidential year since Truman 48, with the sort of freakish exception of LBJ in 64. Every statewide office holder in Virginia was Republican. Overwhelming majorities in our legislative bodies, congressional and state. And that was just in 2001. Today, all 5 statewide office holders in Virginia are Democrats. We've gone blue in 3 presidential elections in a row. We elect Democrats up and down the ballot because we're pro-growth progressives, and we're not ashamed to tell everybody that we know how to manage the economy and create jobs better than Republicans do. So let's be pro-growth progressives. There's a path to victory there in Virginia and Kansas and all around this country. So that's my first point. Second one I want to talk about is Democrats and voting. We're here to celebrate the Johnson County Democratic Party, and you got a lot to celebrate. And this isn't a rearview mirror thing. Celebrate the past, but you got a lot to feel good about in terms of what's coming up. You have more Democrats here in Johnson County than in any county in Kansas. You were the reason, you led the way when Kansas added more Democratic seats to its state legislature in 2016 than any other state in the country, and it was Johnson County Democrats who were leading the way. And if it's going to happen in 2018, if you're going to win more legislative seats, if you're going to put a governor in who follows the right path to growing the economy and the right path to protecting our values, not the wrong path, it's going to be Johnson County Democrats who will do it. So there's a lot of reason to feel good, but it will only happen if we vote, if we encourage others to vote, and if we encourage people to run. And I want to talk about Democrats and voting right now because we've got a burden on our shoulders, and the burden is simply this: to save, defend, and promote participatory democracy in the United States, it's on the Democratic Party to do it. It's on the Democratic Party to do it. Because both the Democratic and Republican parties have strong historical records of expanding access to voting until the presidency of Barack Obama. There was just something about Barack Obama. When he became president, the Republicans pulled a 180 and a reversal, and a party that was for voting rights since Lincoln became a party that was trying to dramatically restrict voting. And that means that it's only the Democrats now, until the Republicans come to their senses, who are upholding the notion of a participatory democracy in the United States. Let me tell you what I mean by that. And I'm going to give props to the Republicans. After the Civil War, when the post-Civil War amendments were passed, the 15th Amendment, you can't deny somebody the right to vote based on the race. That was a Republican Congress and a Republican president that did it. Republicans were a pro-Voting Rights Act party. When women were given the right to vote, it was a Democratic administration, Woodrow Wilson, but strong Republican support. Once again, expanding access, expanding voting. When the 26th Amendment passed to give the vote to 18-year-olds, it was the Nixon presidency. It was bipartisan, but the Republicans were strong to expand access and expand voting. When the Civil Rights Act passed, the Voting Rights Act in the mid-60s, more Republicans in the Senate supported LBJ's effort to pass the Voting Rights Act than did Democrats. The Republicans were a voting rights party. And when the Voting Rights Act has had to be reauthorized time after time after time, Republicans supported the Voting Rights Act. The Republicans were a voting rights party. But then President Obama got elected. President Obama got elected, and the Supreme Court struck down a key piece of the Voting Rights Act, and even the Republican Party that had voted unanimously to reauthorize, that had supported its passage, we cannot get not one Republican in the Congress or Senate to sign on and support a fix of the Voting Rights Act. There have been efforts nationally to restrict early voting, to purge voters' rolls, to disenfranchise voters, to fight campaign finance reform, to fight redistricting reform, and all of these efforts have been led by Republicans, and all of these efforts have been opposed by the Democrats. The Republican Party has sold out their history of being a Voting Rights Act party, and they've done a 180, and if we're going to promote voting, it's all on us. It's all on us. And now we have a president who says, including about my state, of course, I actually won the popular vote. False allegations of voter fraud are now stock and trade on the Republican side, and there is no person in this country who has been more responsible for that than Kansan Chris Kobach. He is the poster child of the Republican Party turning their backs on their history as a party of expanding access to voting. Why are they doing this? Why have they sold out 150 years of history? They've done it because they know that their only path to victory is shrinking voting access, because they are not convinced they can actually win a majority of an engaged, passionate, active voting electorate. So can I put some pressure on you? I lived in a military dictatorship in Honduras where nobody could vote for anything. I happen to believe that participation is not just a responsibility, it's a great gift, it's sacred. And with a Republican Party trying to restrict and carve down voting rights access, I think a key to our country being successful is expanding access, and that, until the Republican Party returns to its senses, it's all on Democrats. The country is counting on us to register, to vote, to encourage, to run. We will not have a participatory democracy if the Democrats don't do this. And that's why we're here, to support local parties and a state party and a federal party, and especially these candidates. Let me just say my last piece, the third thing I want to talk about, Charlottesville. I went to 3 funerals last week, 2 of whom people I knew pretty well. These 3 people were victims of white supremacy, a rally of neo-Nazis, Confederates, KKK members, white supremacists in Charlottesville. 90% of those who came to Charlottesville to do this rally lived outside of Virginia. They brought hatred and bigotry and violence and murder to my state. And they did it because they have a bitter fantasy about the past. In that fantasy, Virginia plays a role in their psychosis. And they hate it when they see a Virginia becoming more progressive, becoming more diverse, going from red to blue. They absolutely hate it. And so they come like moths to a flame, And I saw this when I was the mayor of Richmond, and I saw it when I was the governor of Virginia, to try to stop us from moving forward. I want to tell you about the 3 people who were killed in Charlottesville. Beautiful people, and their stories ought to be told. Heather Heyer was the one that I didn't know. Heather was a 32-year-old paralegal in Charlottesville who, when a white supremacist from out of state gunned his car into a crowd, he killed her and injured 19 other people. Heather grew up in a Republican family in a very rural part of Virginia, north of Charlottesville. Never went to college. Heather was a waitress. Heather saw an ad in a newspaper one day to be a paralegal. And she applied. And she sat down with Alfred, who became her boss, for the job interview. And Alfred eulogized her at her memorial service. Alfred said, "Where'd you go to college?" "I didn't go to college." "What, you're applying for a paralegal job and you didn't go to college? What makes you think you can do this job?" Here's what Heather said. "I'm a waitress, but I listen to people all day. I got the widower who's in for lunch every Wednesday. I got the family with their kids who this is the one place they can afford this place to come out to eat once a week. And all I do is listen to people. And you're a bankruptcy lawyer, and you got a lot of people coming in who are ashamed that they're filing for bankruptcy, and what they need in a paralegal is somebody who can listen to them." And he said, "You know what, I'm going to hire you. I'm going to give you a chance. I don't know if I should or not." And Alfred said within 2 years, Heather was running this office. Her passion, her sense of justice, her listening skills, she could always hand him the file and say, "These guys have a medical problem. These guys were supporting family members who didn't have much, and then they got into a jam because they were trying to help people out." Alfred said one day he and Heather were working late, and because they had to file something the next day, and they left the office at 8:30. Heather's boyfriend was sitting outside, and Alfred met him for the first time. They had a nice visit, and Heather and her boyfriend went off for a date. And the next day he came into work, and Heather was not in a good mood. And he waited till the end of the day, and he said, "Heather, what's up? You don't seem like yourself." "I broke up with my boyfriend last night." "He seemed like a good guy. Why'd you break up with him?" "Well, after he met you, he said, 'You didn't tell me you worked for a black guy.'" Heather said, "Well, why would I tell you that? Well, what does that matter that my boss, the attorney who hired me when I was a paralegal, when nobody else would, why should I have told you? What difference did that make?" "Well, it makes a big difference to me. You didn't tell me you were working for a black guy." And so Heather that night broke up with her boyfriend. That's who this white supremacist ran his car into. Somebody who just believes that people are people. And what difference does it make what color skin my boss is? That was Heather Heyer. Jay Cullen, 2 troopers were assigned special duty on a Saturday. They would have been off, but there was going to be a tough rally, and they were assigned special duty to fly a helicopter, to keep order, to protect people's rights to express themselves, and to film any violence so they could convict anybody who did anything wrong. Jay Cullen was at the helm. There was a mechanical failure. They filmed the violence that's going to enable people to be convicted who need to be convicted. But Jay was the guy who every time I got in a helo when I was governor, pretty much he was flying me. A wonderful pilot, a state police officer, a fanatical road cyclist racer with 2 boys who are 15 and 13 and a beautiful wife. Burke Bates, another trooper who was killed in the helo. I didn't know him as well. Irish Catholic to the bone. He was on Terry McAuliffe's security detail as governor, so I did have the chance to meet him when I was working with Terry. Also, longtime state police officer. When he got a job, finally, he'd wanted to be on the security detail. When he finally got on the gig with the governor, he was so happy, and here's why he was happy. He was Irish Catholic, and so was Terry McAuliffe, and he walked into his supervisor and turned in 15 years of leave requests for St. Patrick's Day on his first day on the Capitol Police. Left behind a beautiful wife, left behind 2 twins that are 11. This is so painful. I was on Face the Nation a couple of days after Charlottesville, and I was asked to be on, and the interviewer asked me, he said, "Listen, I want to talk to you about statues." And I said to him, "Well, I'm glad to, because I dealt with a lot of statues when I was mayor and I was governor, but let's be really clear about one thing before we talk about statues. If Charlottesville was about statues, you wouldn't have asked me on the show this week. You've only asked me on the show because I've been to 3 funerals this week. You've only asked me on this show because these 3 people were killed and dozens were hurt when outsiders brought their bigotry and hatred and violence and murder to the state. This isn't about statues, folks. This isn't about symbols. It's about what's acceptable and what is not acceptable. It's about the meaning of what happened in Charlottesville. And we got to grapple with that. I think we are grappling with it in a painful way in Virginia, but I think we ought to grapple with it as a country. I think the meaning is pretty clear. At this particular time, as Virginians or Kansans, as Americans or Democrats, what are we fighting for and what are we fighting against? I didn't say who are we fighting against. I said what are we fighting for and what are we fighting against? What are we fighting for? People like Heather Heyer, who went out to be peaceful protesters against the Klan and the Nazis and others, they were fighting for what Jefferson believed in. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. They were fighting, and Jefferson is the founder of the Democratic Party. But they weren't only fighting for a Jeffersonian vision, they were fighting for the vision of the founder of the Republican Party. Can a nation dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal long survive? They were fighting for what the abolitionists believed in when they came to Kansas to make sure that the state entered as a state in the Union that was free rather than a state that accepted slavery. They were fighting for what the exodusters came to Kansas for when they believed that this would be a free state where they would be safe. Our founders weren't perfect, but they did one thing, right? They picked equality as the North Star for this country now in its 240-plus year. And every generation in the history of our country has held the current way we live up to that promise and found it wanting. And they found ways where we can make progress and go forward. Ending slavery, giving women the right to vote, protection for dreamers, LGBT equality, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, so that retirees can live with dignity rather than poverty, the Americans with Disabilities Act, the Civil Rights Act, the Affordable Care Act. Again and again and again, a generation wakes up and says, we said it was about equality, but we're not living that way, so let's try to do something and get closer to it. A sailor never gets to the North Star. You can orient by it. You're not going to reach it, but you got to keep going. You got to keep orienting toward it, and that's who our nation is, and that's what we've done, and that's what Democrats fight for every single day. Just under the... Think about what we've done for this country in the last few years, nominating the first minority to be president, first Latina on the Supreme Court, complete LGBT equality, including marriage equality, protection for dreamers. Women can serve in any MOS in the military, first party to nominate a woman to be president again and again and again. It's the Democrats, folks, who are standing up for what Jefferson and Lincoln believed, what the abolitionists believed, what the exodusters believed, and we're standing up as Americans and Democrats to move us forward because we believe it's so simple in the equality of every person in the sight of God. And you know what? I'll tell you something. It's not only right, it works. It works. I told you about Virginia's economic turnaround. Low income, 36th in median income to 12th in my lifetime. How did we do it? North Dakota moved a long way. They discovered oil and gas. We didn't do it. We didn't discover anything underground. We discovered people's brains. Because in 1958, if you were African American, you couldn't go to a school with white kids. You couldn't go to an equally funded school. We didn't care about you and your talent. That New Testament phrase, the parable of the talents. Everybody gets talents. How do you use your talents? Virginia didn't care about the talents of kids if they're skin colors were brown. You couldn't go to UVA if you were a woman, or many of our other colleges either. We didn't care about your talents. We weren't welcome to you if you were an immigrant. 1 out of 100 Virginians in 1958 was born in another country. And so how do we go from 36 to 12? We knocked down the walls and let African Americans and kids of all races learn together. We let women into all of our colleges. We're 1 out of 9 born in another country, not 1 out of 100. We suddenly decided we love talent. We'll grow our talent. We'll bring talent here. We'll recognize talent, celebrate talent, encourage talent, grow talent, attract the institutions that want to be around talent. I mean, what an amazing economic strategy. If you want to go from poor to rich, let people be all they can be. What a revolutionary idea. That's the only thing we did in Virginia. And it moved us from back of the pack to near front of the pack. Jefferson's equality principle isn't just moral and right and godly. It works. It works. And Democrats should never back off on it. Let me tell you something. Some still don't get it. I hear people on the other side, and even some Democrats, saying, the Democrats are too focused on political correctness. I hear them saying, why are the Democrats so focused on identity politics? If you ever hear somebody say that to you, enemy or friend, just say this: it's not about political correctness. It's not about identity politics. It's about equality. It was good enough for Thomas Jefferson. It's good enough for us. It was good enough for Abraham Lincoln. It's good enough for us. It was good enough for abolitionists. It's good enough for us. We are standing up for equality, and by doing so, we are standing up for the North Star that has defined, does define, and will define who we are as a nation. And if somebody gives you grief, say, what is it about equality that causes you such heartburn? Ask them that. Ask them that. That's what we're fighting for. Fighting for equality. We're fighting for equality. And what are we fighting against? Well, Charlottesville showed us what we have to fight against. I'm sorry we have to fight against it now. I thought we might grow beyond it. We have to fight against hatred and bigotry. The ralliers in Charlottesville, they said they were coming because of statues. And then they marched down the main street chanting blood and soil, a phrase from Hitler-era rallies in the 1930s. What does it have to do with the statue? Nothing. They chanted, Jews will not replace us. What does that have to do with the statue? Nothing. The guy who organized the rally is well known as a guy who says the South should have won the Civil War. It would be so much better if either we were divided as a nation or if we had continued to perpetrate the institution of slavery. They're against equality. The guy who organized the rally after the death of Heather Heyer, I'm sorry to say this, I don't really want to say it, but you got to know who these people are, tweeted out that she was a fat, disgusting communist. Hatred and bigotry. And we have to, as Democrats and as Americans, fight against hatred and bigotry with every ounce of the love that we have in our body and the energy that we have in our body. You got to fight against that mindset, and you have to fight against anybody that promotes it, and you have to fight against anybody that enables it. Now, thank goodness, look, it's only a small percentage of people who preach and hold these views with such bitterness. But the problem is they feel very emboldened today. They feel very emboldened today. And far too many people in this country and far too many people in politics are silent in the face of it. If there's one thing that history shows, it shows you cannot be an innocent bystander to hatred. You cannot be an innocent bystander to hatred. If you embrace equality, if you believe like Jefferson and Lincoln and the abolitionists and the exodusters that that's who we are as a nation, you got to stand up and battle against it. Sadly and unbelievably, we have a president who won't. Sadly and unbelievably, we've got a president that doesn't get the equality thing. It's interesting. Jefferson said, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Jefferson enumerated truths in the plural and put equality number one, but when Lincoln was at Gettysburg, he changed it. He said, whether a nation dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal can long survive. Jefferson sort of burned it all off and said, we are just dedicated to one thing in this country. And he said it on a battlefield that had been sanctified by bloodshed and the expiation of sin by both Northerners and Southerners. We are dedicated to one proposition, and we have been, but our president does not understand it. Even Republican Senator Bob Corker this week said our president doesn't have the competence and the character, but especially the understanding of what makes America great to enable him to be good as a president. We have a president who doesn't get equality. About African Americans, he said they're living in hell. He perpetrated the racist lie that President Obama was a United States citizen. He's trashed Muslims. He said you can treat women all kinds of horrible ways, and that's fine. He goes after immigrants, especially if they're Latinos. He goes after all kinds of people. And just yesterday, on a Friday, when you do the things that you're sort of ashamed of at the end of the day because the media cycle isn't so attentive, in the middle of a hurricane, so you'll get even less attention, he pardons a guy who had been convicted of targeted attacks against Latinos that were illegal, and he repeals a decision of the military to allow, if you meet the standards, the very tough standards to serve in the military, you can serve, and your sexual orientation, whether you're transgender, doesn't make a difference. He repealed it, even though the military leadership in recent hearings said they were fine with it. He repeals it. 2 anti-equality moves on one day. I guess that Hurricane Harvey stuff wasn't so time-consuming if he could take 2 anti-equality steps on one day. And I'll tell you another one that is personal and that shows something. When a young Somali in Columbus, Ohio, ran a car into a crowd of people in December, President-elect Trump called it terrorism, and he flew to Columbus to meet with those who had been injured in the attack. When a Muslim immigrant drove a car into a crowd on the Ramblus in Barcelona, President Trump called it terrorism and reached out to offer support to the government of Spain. But when a white supremacist drove his car and killed this beautiful 32-year-old and injured 19 people 90 miles from our national capital, the home of President Thomas Jefferson, he was suddenly all confused about what it was. Oh, there's violence on both sides. There's good people, many good people on both sides. And that family is still waiting to see if the president would reach out to them and express his horror about what happened. Well, look, guess what, folks? No matter how many, and this is something we have to be committed to, no matter how many white supremacists preach their hatred, whether it's in Virginia or anywhere else, and no matter what our president does to embolden them, we're not going back. America will not go back. We won't. No matter how many, and no matter what the president does, we are not going back. Look, we embrace in this room and in this country, you see it every day, we embrace equality. And we know the other path is a dead end. Because believe me, we've seen it in Virginia, where the first Africans came ashore in 1619, captured off Portuguese slave ships to Jamestown, slavery, Jim Crow, massive resistance, segregation in Virginia, in Kansas, all over this country. We've seen it, been there, done that, got the scar tissue. We are not going back. We're not going back. So let me just conclude. I sing a little bit in the church choir in my church, and we sing 2 great songs. One goes, since Missy sang, "We've come a long way, Lord, a mighty long way. We've come a long way, Lord, a mighty long way. We've borne our burdens in the heat of the day, but the Lord has made a way. We've come a long way, Lord, a mighty long way. Now, we can celebrate that we've come a long way, can't we? We can celebrate the gains that have been made, even in a painful time. It's good to remember because it can inspire us. If we made those gains out of slavery and advances for women, advances for LGBT and protections for dreamers, if we've made those gains, we ought to celebrate them. And we have come a mighty long way, getting closer to that North Star that we'll never reach, but that continues to be our North Star. And so often when we have, it's been Democrats who have made sure that we have and have kept us focused on moving forward to that equality goal. But we're not there yet. We're not there yet. There's so much to do, and so many who are counting on us. There's always so many who are counting on us, but right now, right now, so many are counting on us. And so the other song that we sing in my church isn't about yesterday and where we've been. It's about where we're going. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me round. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me round. Turn me round, turn me round. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me round. Gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, marching into freedom land. We've come a long way, but we got a long way to go. Kansas Democrats, are we gonna let anybody turn us around? Are we gonna keep on walking? Keep on talking, keep on voting, keep on registering, keep on running for office, keep on marching. If we do those things, Free Staters, we will get to Freedom Land because of Democrats, because we stand for equality. Thank you for having me tonight. It's great to be with you.
Well, I thought that was pretty good.
Well, for a Catholic, he sounded a lot like a Baptist. I like that. I like that. I like that.
I feel like I just went to church and I like it. I like it a lot.
Well, let me tell you what we're going to do. We're going to build on what you just heard. We are going to be 21st century abolitionists. With that same spirit the abolitionists came here in Kansas that you just heard the senator talk about, we're going to take that power and we're going to move forward. We're going to give you an opportunity. And the way we're going to do that, inside your program, each one of you have a card like this, and you're probably wondering why there are pins in the middle of the table. You usually don't see that very often. That's right. Could we turn up the house lights, please, so we can see folks out in the audience? Yeah. Okay, he's on it. What we're going to be doing...
Stage lights off for us, please. I think they know that we're pretty by now.
We're going to turn the light... There we go. Okay. And we're going to raise a little money. We're going to allow
Hey, where are you going? We're getting ready to take your money. We're going to need you to come back,
Stop
please.
those two. Hey, whoa, hey. Lock that door. Nobody leaves.
Little premature on the exit there.
Nobody leaves. Nobody leaves. All right. Okay. On that pledge card, we're going to tell you what various levels of pledges will purchase and how it's going to help us as a county party. My dear, what would, say, $1,000 do for folks?
Well, I'm going to tell you what $1,000 is going to get you, Barry. $1,000 will get us 250 yard signs, one campaign mailer, and postage for a city council candidate. The cost for one candidate fundraising event, cost of operating, rent plus other office expenses for a Johnson County Democratic Party campaign field office for 1 month. Those are now $1,000 doesn't get you all of those things. $1,000 gets you one of those things, and there were 5 of those things that we needed $1,000 for, so I feel as though we would like to find 5 people who had $1,000. But who does have $1,000 to give to Johnson County Democrats tonight to help us change Kansas? Right
There we
here,
go.
we got a
We got
guy.
a hand up
we got
right here.
1,000. We've got $2,000. Who else has got $1,000 for us tonight? There's $3,000 for us this evening. We want to turn Kansas around, take Kansas back for the Democrats, and make Johnson County a leader in the Democratic Party in Kansas. Do we have another $1,000 pledge tonight? There's $4,000. There's $4,000. I'm going to need one more $1,000, and there it is from that lady right there. Oh, you're just waving at me?
She's just waving. Well, there's one right there. There's
there
one.
it is.
Yep.
All right. Just saying, maybe now's not a good time to wave at me. Don't do that. There's $5,000. Does anybody else want to give us $1,000 tonight to change Kansas, to change Johnson County, to make Johnson County? And there's another one that's $6,000 right
thank
there.
you. Thank you, Jennifer.
We need you to make a difference right here where we live. 500 is going to be our next.
500 is good.
500 is our next amount. And let me tell you what that gets us, Barry. It gets 100 yard signs, 100 campaign T-shirts, preferably a V-neck for me, please. 1 month of online advertising in a Johnson County area publication, and social media advertising reaching 30,000 people. 30,000 people.
There you go.
For $500. That is a small price to pay to get those Democrats in office right here in Johnson County to make our lives better. Who has $500 for that? There's 500. There's 2 500, 3 500, 4 500, 5 500, 6, 7, 8, 9. Who else has got $500? There's a 10th person with $500 right there. And if I know math, that's a lot of $500s. Does anybody else have $500 to help with 100 signs, 100 T-shirts, social media advertising, which quite frankly is the only way that we can make a dent in the current world of the World Wide Web. We must have that social media presence. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram, Missy Koonce.
And I might add in that regard, this evening, this is being live streamed. So your friends, if they want to see this, they go to our Facebook page. They can watch this evening's presentations. You might even reach out to some of your friends in really blue states like, California or New York and say, this is where the fight's being fought. If you want to spend some money on it, where you're going to get a real bang for your buck, Kansas is where you want to invest. Renee and I have set up Johnson County Democratic clubs in Hawaii, New Jersey, California, and we're reaching out to those folks. Please do the same. Please do the same.
But while we're here, and if you don't have $500, and I completely understand, I don't either. I only have health insurance because of Kathleen Sebelius. That's a true story. I'm a gay. I just recently got rights. I got rights and health insurance all in one administration. So if you want to continue to give me rights, $250 could help with candidate filing fees for 2 candidates, 50 yard signs, 2,000 candidate walk cards, 700 candidate door hangers, 500 bumper stickers, basic professional campaign photo session, which you need, cost of graphic design for campaign logo, cost of auditorium rental for 1 legislative forum from our JOCO Democratic reps, and we hold 3 to 4 forums per year for our sitting Dems, and the cost of a personal printer paper and ink. Now, this shit is expensive now. I am not even kidding about that. $250, who's got it? There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, Who else? Who else? $250. I got 7 people who got $250. Who else has got $250 for me? Raise those hands or raise those cards up. Let me know.
There we go.
There we go. 7. Was that 8? 9. 9 of those. We got 10 500s. I'm going to need another 250. Who's got another 250 for me tonight?
Over here.
All right, there we go. We've got 10 people with $250 to spare tonight. Give it up for those people.
Woo!
Does anybody else? There we go. There's 11. Anybody else got $250 for us tonight? Anybody else $250? Right here we do. We've got my friend Kate. Thanks, Kate. All right, anybody else $250 tonight? There's one. There's one right there. You're not just waving at me this time? All right, good. Yes, another $250 donation this evening. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Okay.
What will $100 do?
Well, I'm going to tell you what $100 is going to do, Barry.
Okay.
We get 100. Well, we get water bottles for volunteers.
Yep.
And a campaign, for one campaign for an entire summer, and we're thirsty.
It's hot in Kansas.
I mean, I'm telling you, it's hot.
250 campaign buttons.
Just talking about water bottles makes me have a drink. We get 500 candidate walk cards and social media ad that reaches 10,000 people. 10,000 people, and that's just $100. $100 if you came with a friend tonight. If you came with a friend tonight, you didn't have to pay for your ticket. Give us that $100 right now. $100. Let me see your hands. If you got, there's one right there. There's one right there. Anybody out there's another. There's 2. There's 3. Raise those hands. There's 4 right there. There's 4. There's 5. Who else have we got? Do we got 6 over here? Anybody else got $100 for us tonight? $100 for us to change Kansas, take back Kansas, get Democrats in office. Now, if you just don't have a lot of money, I understand. I'm that person. We're going to need clipboards, though. I used one all night tonight. We need clipboards in a pack of 30, a social media ad reaching 5,000 people, and the cost of a campaign website for 4 months. For 1 month, not 4 months. For 1 month. That $50 will help us with that. $50. If you got $50, there we go. There's a young Dem saying, I have $50. That is lunch for 2 at Panera. I have $50. That was a tank of gas when Bush was in office. I have $50. If you've got $50, fill that card up, raise your hand up in the air, and help us here in Johnson County with $50. Barry?
Yes, ma'am?
I just want to tell you that that was pretty exciting.
Indeed. It was.
I mean, more people were interested in giving us $500 than $50, and I love that about you. So, why don't you thank some people?
Well, I would love to thank some people. First of all, everyone who contributed, thank you so, so much. This has been an amazing evening. It's, as you might well imagine, these things don't come together on their own. So while we're tabulating what proceeds we were able to generate this evening,
just keep raising up those cards if they haven't gotten them yet while Barry's doing thank yous.
I'm going to ask our committee,
happy to get it from you personally.
those folks who helped put this together, to come up on the stage with me. I think they need a little love, a little... Yeah, come on up here. Come on, don't be shy. Come on up. While they're coming up, I also want to thank the young Democrats who came out and worked this evening. It is important that we have young faces, young, vibrant faces in the party. I give props to Missy. When we asked her to get involved, she said, I will, as long as we can have at least one table for young Democrats. They don't have to pay to get in here. So there they are, right there, waving at them.
You're welcome.
Yeah, yeah. We've got a very, very strong young Johnson County Democrats group here in our county, so we're just thrilled to have them involved with us this evening. Let's see what else we got here. Oh, you know what? Monthly. Yes, yes. What I want to also to let you know is if on the back of your program, Tucker, come on up here, man. Tucker's our finance guy. He makes things happen. On the back of your program It's one more ask for this evening. And while we're excited to see how much money we've raised this evening, what's really important in any organization is having a steady stream of cash flow month in and month out so you can do strategic planning. You can plan long range for different candidates, where you want to focus your money. You want to be able to have an office to do that. Someone's going to answer the phone. So what we're asking, and what Renee and I are going to be doing and have done, is you get your credit card and you make a monthly pledge. We've got almost 100,000 registered Democrats in Kansas, and wouldn't it be wonderful if everybody gave us $25 a month? That would be $250,000. But we know that that's a little beyond our expectations at the moment. But what we would like for each of you to do, if you can do $50 a month or $25 a month, fill that card out so that we'll know month in and month out that we can meet our budgetary needs, and we can use money from events like this evening to really work and target at getting folks elected. So if you would do that, I would appreciate it. Yes, ma'am.
People to collect them as they go out.
Yeah. And there are folks, when you're leaving, just drop it off. Folks at the door will take this from you, and it's going to help more than you can imagine. And being good Democrats, let's see, most of our folks have left, but I want to give a big hand to the men and women who waited on us this evening, who prepared the food back in the kitchen, who...
Volunteers.
Yeah. Our AV guys over there, we showed up at 5 o'clock not knowing what we were doing, and they bailed us out. They're doing a fabulous job. And all of the volunteers, whether they were young Democrats or just general Democrats, we want to thank all of our volunteers. These volunteers is what made our evening successful. So do we have a grand total?
It's not so
Drum roll,
grand. It's more
please.
of an estimate, I like to say. More of an estimate.
Got it. Okay, Barry, the total tonight for the 21st century abolitionist is $15,000. Thank you, guys.
So that brings the overall total for what you all have done tonight to over $100,000. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Let the party get started. Band?
The band
Take us
Oasis
away.
back in the back
Thank
is getting
you,
ready
thank
to
you,
kick it
thank
up.
you.
Let's go dance and drink. Thank you, everybody. I'm Missy Koonce, Barry
Grissom.
Grissom. We've had a pleasure being with you tonight.